Hi, I'm Trevor Ford, Communications and Outreach Manager for Citizens in Charge Foundation. I'm here today with Citizens in Charge President Paul Jacob, and we're going to talk to you about the different ballot measures that are going on in November around the country.
Great.
So Paul, we've got a few measures on the ballot around the country this November. You want to start talking about them a little bit here?
Sure. 5 states have measures on this November's ballot. 2 of them, Texas and New Jersey, the measures were put on by the legislature. They don't have a citizen initiative process or referendum process. In Texas, there are actually the most measures on any state ballot, 11, all put on by the legislature. In New Jersey, there's 1 measure dealing with an open space bond issue. That's the only measure on the ballot. Today, we're not really dealing with those. We're dealing with what citizens have put on the ballot around the country.
Alrighty, well let's start with Maine here. Looks like there's 5 different measures on the ballot this year that voters are going to be weigh in on. I guess it goes from everything from taxes to gay marriage.
Certainly does. Maine's got a heck of a ballot, and in fact there are 2 legislative sponsored measures, one to bond issue and one dealing with giving folks more time at the local clerk's office to count the signatures. The first measure on the ballot is what's called a veto referendum. It's the voters saying, we want to take something the legislature passed. In this case, it's same-sex marriage. And in Maine, they've actually passed a same-sex marriage that has as part of it something that we're seeing talked about more and more in various states, a specific measure exempting religious institutions from being attacked over discrimination if they have a different view on gay marriage than might be the public view in law.
Okay.
So this is measure 1, and it would, if people vote in favor of it, it actually would uphold what the legislature did. If they vote against it, it would remove that law from the books, and there would not be same-sex marriage in Maine.
Okay. And the question 2, it looks like it's an auto excise tax repeal.
Yes, this is really dealing with hybrid cars or cars that get over 40 miles per gallon, which save you a little bit of money.
Yeah.
But it basically cuts the excise tax in half.
Okay.
So it's something that is going to put more money in people's pockets if they happen to be driving a hybrid, or if they happen to be driving a car that gets 40 miles to the gallon or better. For a lot of the cities that rely on this excise car tax, they would get less money in revenue.
Okay. And question 3 is the school district consolidation repeal. Now this sounds like another veto referendum.
It is a veto referendum, and you see this around the country. Efforts to save money by consolidating school districts tend to be popular among folks who are budgeting for schools, tend to be not so popular among more rural residents who feel like they're losing their local school, and in some cases are going to have to drive further to a school, or feel like they don't, the school's not really in their community. So it tends to be more of an urban-rural argument.
Okay.
But it should be interesting to see how that comes out in November.
Okay. On to question 4 here. That's the General Tax Relief Initiative, and I see here it's the nickname they're calling it is Tabor 2.
Well, the Taxpayer Bill of Rights is a measure that passed in Colorado years ago. It sets a cap on state spending that from year to year, state spending cannot increase more than the rate of inflation plus population growth. Some folks argue, government needs to grow more. Of course, the folks who are behind this measure would argue that one of the mechanisms in the measure is to allow voters to vote in favor of spending more if legislators decide, hey, we don't have the money to do what we need to do, or at the local level they say we don't have the funds to do what we want to do, and they want to spend more of the money that comes in, then they can take that to the voters, and ultimately the voters would make that decision.
All right, and finally here in Maine, question 5 is the medical marijuana initiative.
These have won all over the country, not in every instance, but in virtually every instance. It's been one of the measures that really has benefited from the initiative process, because years ago most legislatures, you really couldn't get the time of day if you were talking about medical marijuana, other drug decriminalization measures and so on. Last November in Massachusetts, a neighboring state, you had one of the probably strongest decriminalization measures ever passed by any state in the country that won there, and took, I don't remember the exact specifics, but I believe it was something, an ounce of marijuana or less is a $500 fine. There's no criminal penalty other than that fine. So there have been moves like this. In Maine, it's medical marijuana, so you'd need a doctor's note. But in the states where this is passed, it's something close to a de facto decriminalization of marijuana.